Hey everyone, how are we doing today?
Hello.
John, you're with us. How are you today?
Perfect. Doing
Perfect. Whoa, that's
good.
awesome. I love the energy. It's Friday, right? No complaints.
No complaints whatsoever.
We have about four people, and I have a security feature on here so we don't get any nonsense involved. I've had some colleagues that have shared just terrible experiences with people hijacking their Zoom calls. So I just try to protect it as much as possible. So we'll just monitor real quick. Now, John, where are you tuning in from today?
From Altamont, Kansas, Labette County High School. My athletic director actually reached out to you, I believe, about a month ago about maybe working with our school district. I've followed you now for a little over a year. So,
Excellent. Well, we are glad you are here. And if they don't show up in 1 minute, we're just going to get started because it is recorded. So I want to be mindful of time. All right. So we are going to be talking about building a championship fueling plan. So in our time today, my goal is that you walk away with how much to eat, what to eat, and when to eat it, and understanding the discrepancies in fueling tournaments, fueling games, fueling events, because every athlete obviously has custom needs based on their sport, activity, goals. So today we really just want to go through some of those fundamentals that I constantly get asked questions about, which is why I thought it would be a good time to have this webinar. So we're going to go through, why we fuel the way that we do. So you've probably seen the 4-2-1 chew, nibble, sip nutrient timing strategy. And although that's a really fantastic strategy, it's something I've helped our high school athletes, college athletes, and then workday warriors, rec athletes figure out and what works best for them. The biggest thing to remember always is that there are no magic meals. What you eat, hydrate with, and do in the weeks, days, months leading up, that really has the largest impact on performance. So I really want to be very clear about that because a lot of the outreach that we get is, hey, what do I eat before a game? What should I be eating on my tournament day? And we don't ever want to try new foods. And I know that seems basic and elementary, but you would be surprised how many parents and coaches they're just unaware of how some of those spicy or high carb or high fat foods can negatively affect that athlete's performance. So social media is a blessing and a curse because we have a lot of professional athletes too that share, I had M&Ms before my game, or I tried this new smoothie, and then others do that, and then the athlete is throwing up everywhere and has a terrible experience. So I really want to emphasize how important it is you do what works well for you, and figuring out based on the foods and recommendations that we provide what that looks like. So if your coach is listening to this, making sure that you're giving your athletes, the basics on fats, carbs, and protein, which I'm just going to briefly go through because some people still, unfortunately, like I said, with social media, I'm seeing people calling spinach a carbohydrate. It is not a carbohydrate. It contains very minimal amounts of carbs. So real quick though, before we do that, always got to address sleep. It's king. It influences our appetite, our mood, our energy levels, even digestion, just because of the fact that we have a lot of people out there with the mentality of outwork everyone. They don't believe in sleep. It's for the weak. That's not true. We have the research. We know that athletes that get less than 8 hours of sleep are 1.7% more likely to be injured. And those athletes too that struggle to get enough sleep always complain about not having an appetite for breakfast. So our sleep is first as a priority. So making sure in the days leading up to games, tournaments, heavy training sessions, making sure you're really striving to get that, 7 to 9 hours. 9 to 11 is technically the recommendation for adolescents, according to the National Sleep Foundation. All right. So macros 101, we have carbs, fat, and protein, right? We know that fat takes longer to digest. It's 9 calories per gram. Protein is 4 calories per gram. Carbs, 4 calories per gram. We know that we break down carbs a lot quicker than we do fat and protein. And obviously that is something that is very important when it comes to nutrient timing, because how we load the gut and how we fuel should be primarily carbohydrates and a little bit of protein in those hours leading up to training, games, or even tournaments. Protein obviously repairs, it rebuilds, it protects tissue. So that's why I said a little bit of protein. And really on the day of a game or with, back-to-back games, we want to really focus on carbohydrates. It is the main energy source substrate for both muscle and brain. So from a ATP standpoint, which drives muscle contraction. I bring this up because I get questions all the time about keto and, well, athletes do really well on a high fat diet. And what do you think about that? So I go back to the science. It's not my opinion. We know that although we can produce more ATP with fat, it's at a much slower rate, which is why carbs are always going to be king. We don't produce as much ATP, but we produce it at a faster rate. So it's obviously something that is more, preferred for muscle and brain because of that process. So you can condition your gut. You could take years to tank your performance to figure out how to become fat adapted. I don't recommend it. I've worked with a lot of master endurance athletes, and it took them years to get back into eating more carbs and protein. They just tried to do the fat metabolic system that they were recommended by some of these keto carnivore people. So youth athletes, adolescent athletes, college athletes, we need to focus on carbs being king and obviously protein being part of that equation as well. So we know what protein does, and I will share this slide deck after the presentation with you. So if you're thinking about, what are good protein options, if that's a question, I had someone email me about that if I was going to address it. It's in here. We know highest quality protein sources are those that are rich in leucine. So it's going to be your animal proteins. And if you are a plant-based athlete, you're a plant-based program or coach, just understand you're going to have to consume about 2 times as much plant protein to get the same benefits from animal protein because of leucine. And we know that from the science. And then, yeah, obviously carbs, if we go through the macros, these are the best options. Now let's just real quick talk about, right? So one of our objectives of this webinar was to build a performance plate. And we know that a performance plate contains carbohydrates, protein, fruits and vegetables, and obviously your dairy, healthy fats. This is how your plate should look at every single meal. I don't care if it's a game day, if it's a practice day, it's a rest day. As a competitive athlete, you need carbohydrates, you need protein, you need fruits and vegetables. And from a nutrient timing standpoint, right, if we're talking a main meal, number one, 4 hours out, and I'm going to get into the chew, nibble, sip, but every athlete should be eating a minimum of 3 meals per day because they need the calories, they need the nutrients. So this is how you build a high quality performance plate. Oftentimes athletes who maybe are struggling to maintain their weight, they might need to increase the portion of the plate. So we would increase the protein intake, and obviously carbs being half, and then your fruits and vegetables here as well. The goal always is to have a balanced plate because it equates to balanced energy levels. And we know that if you only consume carbs or you only consume fat, that's not ideal for, I'll make sure everybody got in, it's not ideal for your blood sugar level. So we always want to try and, balance out protein and carb, protein and, sweet potato, if you're doing that. The biggest thing is just, this is where you start. So lots of calories are required for youth athletes because they're still growing and developing a body, which is why I highly recommend 3,000 to 6,000 calories per day. It just depends if you're hockey, baseball, that is a whole nother, several presentations, but most athletes that are just getting into nutrition are not eating 3 balanced meals. So this is where we start. And taking it a step further with obviously nutrient timing and nutrient strategies, we need to know that, right, if somebody is an endurance athlete or if someone's a power athlete, they're going to have different carbohydrate needs. So we've talked about the basics of the plate. Now, if we start talking about strategizing with increasing calories, increasing, carbohydrates, what does that look like? So our endurance athletes, right, they're going to need between 3 and 5 plus grams of carbohydrates per day. So for the sake of 150-pound athlete, that is a significant amount of carbohydrates, likely more than most are consuming. Because I've been seeing a lot of nutrition logs over the years, and athletes are just unaware of how many carbohydrates they truly need. And just for context and perspective, for every hour of activity, you need roughly 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrates. So between liver and muscle, we can only store about 400 grams. So you you think about being a young athlete, you're burning calories, burning carbs to just, function and live. And then you tack on tons of training, maybe you're a multi-sport athlete and you're doing additional things, you're going to need more calories and carbohydrates. So that is something that is still very misunderstood in my experience with working with people, is just the unaware reality of how many carbs are being expended during training and just growing and developing a body at the youth, high school level, and obviously college athletes too. Things change, but this is the recommendations. ACSM, ISSN. When I calculate out, when we do rather, protein needs, we are going between 1.2 to 1.4. I like to go higher to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, and this equates to about 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. And then obviously we have our snacks in between, which is also a part of nutrient timing. But this is where, taking it a step further beyond the plate is helpful, because you can take your weight in pounds, divide it into kilo, right? And then you can insert, the macros to get out your, energy needs. And then you can divide that into 3 to 6 meals per day based on the schedule of the athlete. Obviously, if you're a coach listening to this, you're not writing out a meal plan for them, but you're giving your athletes guidance that, hey, this is how we do it. And I've worked with a number of coaches that have helped their athletes understand, like, this is how much I weigh. This is my weight in kilos. Let's then figure out how much protein I really do need to repair from all the training I'm doing. And obviously, after a tournament day, you're going to need to ensure that you're refueling and rehydrating. So we'll talk about that as well. But I think it's pretty clear how many calories are required for athletes that are training at a very high level, which is quite a few. All right, so here it is. Chew, nibble, sip. And if you recall how I said, what you eat in the hours, days, and weeks has the largest impact, right? So we've talked about how to build a performance plate. We know that athletes need a minimum of 3 meals per day. I like a second breakfast, obviously, and that can be something as small as, hard-boiled eggs, string cheese, maybe some fruit and peanut butter. That's great. Before we talk about fueling morning events and afternoon events, well, let's just go through the nutrient timing strategy. So chew, nibble, sip. And what that means is 4 hours out, you're having a main meal. According to that whole performance plate, it's going to contain protein, carbohydrate, fat, fruit, vegetable, obviously your dairy. So I have meal examples here: grilled chicken sandwich, avocado, whole grain pretzels, Greek yogurt, pear. We're getting plenty of carbs there because we have pretzels, we have the sandwich, the bread, right? And obviously you could do a wrap, you could do a tortilla, you could do rice in place of that. The most important thing, right, is that we have every component on the performance plate met. And we have our dairy with it. And I always recommend, on a game day, limiting the whole fat products, just because obviously fat takes longer to digest. And a lot of athletes have just reported like feeling too full. So if they're doing whole fat milk or whole fat Greek yogurt, it becomes challenging for them to eat the whole meal. So that's where I recommend the low fat dairy in that sense. So either non-fat or low fat Greek yogurt. Just for context, I'm not against full fat dairy products. I think that they're actually beneficial, and I do recommend our youth athletes eat them. But in the sense of a nutrient timing strategy on a game day, competition, tournament, it's just the day that we avoid and limit the high fat dairy products. We obviously have a little bit of avocado in there too. You don't want to do too much, again, because your goal is really, you're just tapping that glycogen tank, if you will, because if you have, an afternoon or evening game. So 4 hours out, right? Chew, main meal. Goal is to eat the whole thing. Never try new foods on game day or an intense training day. That's very important. And if you work with young athletes, you understand that they like to do these crazy TikTok challenges, and trying the new spicy TikTok, whatever tortilla you saw your friends doing on game day is not the right thing to do. Jokes aside, so 4 hours out, we've talked about that. 2 hours out, you're nibbling. So we want to think protein and carbs, a little bit of protein and carbohydrates, because you have about 2 hours. So we don't want to have a full gut. We want to be able to break things down in time to access that fuel when we need it. So if we have too much fat, for example, right, it takes much longer, 9 calories per gram, to break down fat. So it's not appropriate per se to have fat because it just takes longer to digest. And if you haven't digested and absorbed those nutrients, they're basically no good to you, because you're not going to be able to use them. And also, we don't want the blood flow going to our stomach to digest meals. We want it going to the extremities. So that's why it's best to focus on protein and carbohydrates. So oatmeal, hard-boiled eggs, you can obviously take out the yolk if you wish. I always recommend, if this is 2 hours out, most athletes could do a hard-boiled egg perfectly fine. 5 grams of fat really isn't that much. I'm talking, not eating steak, eating, a full out peanut butter and jelly sandwich 2 hours out. You could probably do the PB&J about 4 hours out, and every athlete's different. You can condition your body and train it, but as you know, right, it takes longer to digest that fat. So that's something I see a lot of and hear a lot of is just, people eating peanut butter before games, or, competitions with the banana. I don't advise that. I discourage it, because most of the athletes we work with, they feel better actually when they stop doing that. They saw a post online, peanut butter PB2 powder. You could do the powdered nut butter with the banana because the fat is basically removed there. So that's a good way to swap that out if you really like the banana and nut butter, to avoid the fat. But yeah, so 2 hours out, it's just nibble, right? So you're thinking nibbling, you're not eating a full meal. Again, 2 hours, thinking quick digesting carbohydrates, yogurt and berries, non-fat. You could do the banana RX bar. The RX bars have about 12 grams of fat. And if it's about 2 hours out, you have enough time to break that down. And that's a popular one of our soccer players and volleyball athletes. And then 1 hour out, you're sipping. This is not, anything that you're chewing. We're just thinking sipping, quick digesting carbohydrates. Tart cherry juice is great because you're getting the carbs, you're getting the antioxidants as well. Honey, the applesauce packets that are, zero fiber. They just break down, digest, and absorb into the bloodstream. That's what you want because, again, our goal is to have zero solid food in the stomach. You want the blood flow going to your extremities. You do not want it going to your stomach for digestion. And that's why a lot of athletes will get cramps, like stomach cramps. They just don't feel good. And oftentimes it's because they maybe had a higher fat, nibble, or sip, right? 1 hour out sip, 2 hour out nibble. And that has affected them in a negative way. So I really want to condition our athletes whenever we start with them or when I'm educating that, hey, this is the type of nutrient strategy that you execute on a practice day to figure out what works best for you, right? So we have the timeline figured out 4, 2, 1, and it's very simple to follow. And now what you're probably thinking is, well, that's great if it's afternoon, evening, but what about early morning? Same rules apply. So you're still, the day before, you're still eating your balanced meals. But what we would do differently, quick 7 a.m. kickoff, like for soccer, right? Or tennis or any sport, right? We want to focus on having kind of still, right, that same nibble opportunity. And here's the, PB2 powder. But the night before, you want to do a bigger pre-sleep meal or pre-sleep snack, if you will. You want to add in more carbs. So oatmeal with, some kiwi or, doing some cottage cheese with slice of toast, and you can put jelly on it. We want to fill that, think about it this way. This is my water here. Your glycogen is being depleted while you sleep, which is a good thing to maintain homeostasis because we've got to stay alive. Our blood sugar has to be at an appropriate level so that we don't die. Thank goodness for that, right? So we have to add in some of those carbs before bed because we're going to deplete through them while we're sleeping. So that if we have an early morning game, we don't want to show up on half reserves, right? We would never show up to the Indy 500 on a half a tank of gas. We would fuel up. So that's why you want to add in some protein and carbs, right? The sip, if you have 2 hours. Say you have a competition at 6 a.m., which is very rare, but if you're a weightlifter or combat sports, things like that, you're going to have a very different fueling strategy, but the same principles apply. That's where the cherry juice, doing a bagel, like a white bagel, there's no fiber in it. It breaks down quickly. That's where you're able to get in 60 grams of carbs. So we really have plenty of carbohydrate options, right? So that you show up. Our goal, right, is to be full, but not have solid food in the stomach at the time that we're going to be, participating, executing whatever it is. If it's the, set difficult training session, higher volume day, if it's a tournament, that's where, these principles really are helpful for athletes and coaches, because during a tournament, you really only have an hour, or if you're track and field, you don't really have a lot of time in between events. So that's why you're really going to want to stick with the nibble and sip portion, because you have very minimal time to break down and digest things before you go to your next event or next game. The 100% fruit bar is 100% fruit. It's zero fiber. These are great. So it's basically like, doing a gel, or, doing honey. It's quick carbohydrates. These are available at any gas station. They're at every grocery store. These are the best options. You can do sports drink. You could also do pretzels. You can do grapes. I love doing fruit. And the reason why I recommend fruit is obviously you're getting antioxidants, you're getting carbs, you're getting that quick sugar. And most athletes really don't have any issues with like the higher water content fruits. So like your watermelon, your grapes are going to be great. Bananas are dicey, just because I have different athletes say different things. So if you're a banana person and you really enjoy the banana, I would still recommend, looking at about 90 minutes out. One of my Boston athletes, that is the brand, John. So your question, and I know it sounds crazy, but that's the actual brand, is That's It. You see that? I know it's kind of crazy when I tell parents, they're like, what do you mean that's it? Like, are you done talking? No, that's it. That's it. That's the fruit bar. Um, really incredible marketing on their end, but those are really great. And you can get them on Amazon for probably like $1.50 less than if you go to Kroger or any of the other grocery stores, because you can get them in bulk. And I always recommend buying in bulk because you can save a ton of money. But keep those on hand, because those can be stashed in a backpack. You can put them in your locker. And that's part of this too, is that if you get your kids into the habit of packing and planning ahead, and then making a locker out of their, or making a pantry out of their locker, you can store the pretzels, you can store the RX bars, you can put banana, pear, orange, apple in there. You can do, the little honey packets, the applesauce. Those are staples. And what I was saying, so one of my endurance athletes, just guy was very in tune with his body. And we noted that it was the banana. He was getting some just like, side aches. He's very conditioned, but it was the banana. So we removed the banana and then swapped it with honey, just straight up honey. He felt great. He didn't bonk out. His blood sugar stayed high because that's quick sugar. So those are the types of things, right, that we recommend, sipping on, and never try new foods on game day or tournament day. Experiment in the off season on a practice day, so that you can really dial in this nutrient timing strategy. And as we talk about, pre-workout, I am so against these things. They're just loaded with caffeine, which is incredibly dangerous. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no more than 100 milligrams of caffeine for children under the age of 18. So when you're looking at energy drinks, pre-workouts, they have more than that often, right? And most of these kids too are not drinking water, they're skipping meals, and they're not getting to bed early enough. So you can never replace the fundamentals with these pre-workouts, and it's one of the worst habits to ever build. So I always try to get our athletes and folks into the habit of pre-workout protein carb, right? So the Greek yogurt and fruit, protein muffin cup and fruit, couple of, hard-boiled eggs and an apple 2 hours out. If you're that exhausted that you need a pre-workout for your training session, you shouldn't even be there in the first place. You should go take a nap. So I'm very passionate about that. And you can go watch some of those videos that I talk about it. But let's quick talk about too, the night before. It's always a question. When we talk about building a balanced performance plate, and we know that we want to have every component of, fruit, the vegetable, the whole grain, and the protein. What you may find that if you're an athlete that just kind of, this is different for everybody, but if you respond negatively to FODMAPs, like broccoli, cruciferous vegetables, apples, some of those things that are, bothersome to you, you may find that, yeah, we just reduce some of those high fiber vegetables the night before, and we focus on more, doing like thoroughly cooked asparagus, thoroughly cooked spinach, and avoiding the fried foods, right, that are high in fat and oils. You want to try, again, avoid unfamiliar spicy foods. You want to think about, the night before being, again, you've already tried out, you know what works well for you, like rice with, olive oil, avocado oil. Avoid going out, but if you're traveling as an athlete, sometimes you can't control that, but just try and, recommend sauce on the side, or drizzle, don't drench. Sticking with lean, grilled, roasted, never fried, and avoid all spicy things. Yes, that's a good question. I'm not sure who's asking it, but I love that question. So cottage cheese. I have a cottage cheese ice cream recipe because even as a registered dietitian, I don't like cottage cheese either, but it's delicious with some nut butter and strawberries or peaches, blend it all up with some Fairlife. But I really don't think that there's, any, substitute for cottage cheese per se. If you're looking at it from a comparison of nutrients, I would recommend Greek yogurt because both are going to contain high quality protein, calcium, vitamin D. I think the consistency of cottage cheese is really strange, but that's me. And if you put cherries in it and you mix it in a blender, like I said, with some of those other things, it's delicious. But any of those pre-sleep snacks that are going to contain, leucine, some calcium, vitamin D, and then obviously magnesium. I would recommend swapping the cottage cheese with Greek yogurt. You could do string cheese. You could also do deli turkey and tart cherries. We have, tart cherry juice. I have a pre-sleep pre-sleep recommendation graphic here too at the end, because that's a great question. I always tell athletes too, if they don't like something, we don't force them to eat it because they're not going to, they don't like it, but preparation is always helpful too. So it's how it's prepared. If you mix in the cottage cheese into a blender with Fairlife, you put ice in there, banana, peaches, strawberries, delicious. I've had some of my pickiest eaters really enjoy that. So I'm a big advocate for finding what they like. And there's obviously other opportunities that we can get in the calcium, vitamin D, the protein. Awesome. And yeah, just never forcing anybody to eat things they don't like and just giving them options. It's a good question. We'll have time for questions in the end too, if you want to explore that more. So yes, balanced meal. So pasta, if you do pasta, avoid the high fat, heavy sauces, marinaras, Alfredo sauces, keep those on the side. And like I said, drizzle, don't drench. That's something I say to our football athletes, soccer, track and field, just because some of those sauces, they're super high fat. They will prevent you, like I said, from sleeping well, right? Because what you eat for dinner does influence your sleep. You want to make sure you are also not eating too late. You want to try and front load your calories always. Those that front load their calories tend to be at a lower risk for nutrient deficiencies as well. All right, so here are, more game day examples for both female, male athletes, thinking if you have a 7 o'clock game, your basketball often, or football or baseball, these are great tournament snacks too, or tournament meals rather, because you can always have these things later on. So if we're thinking 4 hours out, I love dates. Dates are fantastic because they're, quick sugar as well. And that's a good option if you're trying to get in more calories and carbohydrates. Sports drink, you can do your sandwich. Cucumbers, berries. Berries are rich in antioxidants. Also an excellent choice on a test day if you want your brain to function at its best. Walnuts are excellent as well. We know that there's magnesium in our nuts and seeds, and magnesium is often one that athletes are deficient in, and that can also lead to muscle cramping. This is a very balanced meal, right? Protein, your protein is in that sandwich. We're getting carbohydrates. We're having our, antioxidants, our fruit, vegetable. Same thing over here. And this is actually Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. It's grilled, right? No, never do fried foods on game day or even after, right? Because it causes more inflammation, and you have your inflammation from the training session. So you want to reduce the inflammation by having your antioxidant rich fruit cup there. And we have our sports drink for extra carbohydrates. This is the type of meal that, like I talk about, if you're needing additional carbohydrates because you're an endurance athlete, and you're struggling to maintain your weight, this is a great way to do it because these foods don't take up too much real estate in your stomach, but you're still able to get in a solid, 800 calories by eating these things. And part of this is, some athletes too, doubling up on protein. It just depends on the place you go, but some of the, places that are serving, in school meals have their regulations. But if you're having a chicken breast and you're a male athlete, I always say double up on protein. So you're essentially getting like 6 to 8 ounces of that chicken, and that can help you meet that 40 grams of protein need. And then obviously we have our dairy here. And the most important thing, right, is to make sure that it's a balanced meal and going with what foods you like. And here are just some examples with, parents and booster clubs that are asking, hey, we like to do a team dinner, about 3 to 4 hours out, right? Your chew. What are some good options and ideas? I actually have a free blog. You can go to the website. I posted, it's literally 8 meals of, these are ideas for team meals on the day of that are high protein, or not high protein, they're high quality. They're protein, carbs, balanced meals that you can integrate on a budget. If you're a booster club looking for that, go right to the website. It's under my blogs. So this one, grilled chicken, right? Never fried, no spicy. You can still do like taco or, Chipotle stuff. You just want to avoid the spicy stuff. And obviously fruit is a good option, Greek yogurt, pretzels, string cheese, applesauce packets, all things that are budget friendly that still provide the carbs, the critical calories that the athlete needs to perform at their best. Always lean protein. In Texas, they like to do barbecue, and we got them to do the barbecue sauce on the side. You've probably seen maybe a Southern meal graphic. And if you do the sauce on the side, right, drizzle, don't drench. Because you know how we've all been there. We just put on as much dressing as possible. And like I said, it's just a lot of fat, and it becomes cumbersome for the body to digest that and break it down. All right, so here are some quick tournament snacks as well. And these are things that, can be packed to school. You can take them in your backpack. They're the PB&J, as you see here, right? We can always do a jelly sandwich too. So as you know, right, we don't recommend fat right before, but jelly and bread. You do white bread, it breaks down very quickly, right? If we were to take a cup of water and squish down white bread, it would disintegrate really quickly. And this is often something I show our young athletes to illustrate why we choose white bread on, tournament day when we're in between versus whole wheat, because the fiber and the grain takes longer to break down. So if I was stuffing the grain and then the white bread both into this cup of water, the white bread would just break right down. And that's the same thing of what it does in our body. There's no fiber in it. There's no nutrients in it, essentially, other than carbs, which is what you want, right? You want those quick carbohydrates to maintain blood sugar levels so that you don't fatigue early and you can sustain, right, the energy that you need to stay, competitive. But if you have 2 to 3 hours, then yes, you can do the whole grain. I do recommend it, obviously, because B vitamins, fiber, but that's where, right, nutrient timing, the appropriate foods for the appropriate time in the appropriate amounts is critical. Rice cakes and honey, rice cakes and jelly are excellent choices. They're low cost, they're shelf stable. You can literally have one of those as a nibble slash sip 1 hour before or between. So pretzels would apply to that as well. Fruit, if you have, like I said, all of these options, now that you know the difference between your macros and when it's best to have protein and carbs and when it's okay to have some fat and some additional fiber in there. These are just good options for folks to pick from. I do think it's really important that if you do, the bagel and cream cheese, again, just be mindful of the fat content in the cream cheese and, choosing the lower fat one. You can still use all of these items. You just have to be mindful of the portion, right? The turkey sandwiches, very versatile because you can take that turkey sandwich and you can transform it into a wrap, a pita, a bowl. You can dice up the turkey and then obviously throw in, some pretzels. You can make it into a little salad bowl there too. And obviously some berries if it was summer. Obviously it's getting cold now, but I've had a lot of athletes make some really interesting combinations, and that's the most important thing, right? It's just finding things that you like out of the options. And here's an example of preseason fueling. So if we're, thinking about baseball, softball athletes, your goal right now really should be to increase your nutrient composition of each meal as much as possible, as many fruits and vegetables to, reduce inflammation, because there's a lot of athletes that are training every single day or only having one rest day. And now is the time to really enhance your antioxidants and focus on your nutrient timing strategies, so that you can obviously perform at your best this spring, right? Champions are built in the off season. And if you're in season right now, depending upon what sport you're in, still great options. But you just want to be mindful, right, of, the fat content. If you do almonds in a mason jar oats or your overnight oats or Greek yogurt parfaits, again, just remember 4 hours out. So this is a solid one for some of the weightlifters. some of the wrestlers out there that are still working on their nutrition. And obviously recovery is a 24-hour process. So we're always regenerating, recovering. So all meals matter. And if we're thinking weigh-ins too for nutrient timing, the same principles apply as far as, right, the chew, nibble, sip, but I do want to just make a note of this. I've had a lot of questions about it is, yeah, before and after weigh-ins, right? We want to think about the amount of carbohydrates that we're adding because we know carbohydrates draw water into the cell. So you want to be mindful of that if you are teetering on, making weight or not making weight within a pound or two. Just know that, having abundance of carbohydrates is going to influence the amount of water you retain. So you want to refuel with those carbohydrate sources after post weigh in here. So, the wrap, the that's it fruit bar, more fruit, fruit adds a lot of water as well. And that's something to be mindful of. But tournament day stuff, same options, opportunities. This Kind protein energy bar, this has 10 grams of protein. Because right, we want a little bit of protein. We still want carbohydrates, but these are just, again, just always trying to give everybody options. And don't be afraid to do, grilled chicken breasts. You can dice those up. You can put those in a container and pair them with grapes. I would like to normalize in our society where we're less reliant upon supplementation. Obviously, food first. There's a time and place for supplements, but we're getting high quality leucine from chicken breasts that you can't per se get in our supplements. And the supplement industry is regulated despite misinformation. It's just not as heavily regulated as our pharmaceutical. So if you get a third party tested whey protein, pea protein, that's perfectly fine, but just understand that they're a proprietary blend and they're not going to contain the same amount of critical leucine that our whole foods would. So I have slides on protein powders. If you want to check that out, it's also in some of my blogs, free access. But I just really want everybody to get into the habit of eating real food because that's where we get our nutrients from. And you shouldn't be reliant upon supplements. Supplements are meant to supplement the gaps. Okay. And for time's sake, so this is a slide, people either love it or they hate it. I have a lot of people that just say, like, that's impossible. My kid can't eat that way. They don't have, break in school. They can't bring water bottles. I know, I hear you, all the things, but there's also not any information on how to actually structure, right, and time meals and snacks. So this is all information. You build out your schedule however you see fit. But what you can see consistently here is that student athletes need some nutrition every 2 to 3 hours. How you want to go about that is completely up to you. We help our athletes in coaching sessions or our partnership. We base it based on their schedule. So they send us their schedule and then we tailor the meals and snacks according to their schedule. So this is a real schedule for soccer athletes. And I made this quite a few years ago. I've tweaked it obviously, but this is an actual schedule. Okay. So that's why I'm saying, like, when someone says this is not realistic, it is. And here's why. If you actually, number one, ask the school, can we bring water bottles? Explain the benefits. I have tweets, I have content that I've called schools and I've asked them about it. Can the athlete put the water bottle outside the classroom? Can they put their half a turkey sandwich in a little cooler outside the classroom? Can they go have a 5-minute break to eat it? Yes. People are so afraid to ask. It'll always be no unless you ask the question. So before you shoot it down, give it an opportunity to try, right? And I'm always looking for solutions. I know it's really challenging out there for folks to help their athletes get in more calories, but if you haven't tried it, how do you know if it works? So ask questions. Can you bring a little cooler? Can you put that cooler in the locker? Can they blend up a smoothie and put it in a Yeti and stick it in their locker because it's going to stay cold all day? These are all strategies I've worked with my athletes on and it works. Schools don't care about that. If you're cleaning up your stuff, it's fine. But they do allow water bottles once you explain, like, the athlete is able to learn better, they're more focused in the classroom, they perform better health, all the things. Nobody can argue with that. Of course, parents still, it is hard because your athlete often may not listen to you, but what you can do is just do the best and just share this content with them. Let them know, like, hey, you want to be your best, you want to get bigger, faster, stronger. This is how you do it. And it's not coming from them per se, it's coming from an external source and they're more likely to listen. Parents on the call, we could say the exact same thing. Fortunately, your kiddo is going to listen to us because we're total strangers. And I know I didn't listen to my dad, but he was always right. So that being said, here's the best way to kind of strategize, throughout the day. Greek yogurt parfait, you can bring the core power, you can do, fruit, you could do a breakfast burrito, planning those things out in advance. Again, always about solutions. So if you're not doing meal prep right now as a family, you got to get into the habit of doing some meal prep. You don't have to make 5-course gourmet meals, but do breakfast burritos, do hard-boiled eggs, get your grilled chicken, put together fruit, vegetables, do smoothie bags. You can put together 6 smoothie bags for each day of the week, and then you just dump it in the blender and add your liquid and blend. There really just is no excuse not to fuel when you've planned ahead, right? So that's why planning is critical. And if you can get in a second breakfast, that is always going to benefit you, because most athletes, barely able to finish a breakfast, maybe you got to get up 5 minutes earlier to make that happen, but find a way to be successful, because these meals and snacks will help you stay energized, help you prevent muscle, breakdown, help you improve your recovery. And we know too, right, that athletes that skip breakfast tend to be, higher risk for nutrient deficiencies, have less energy, more injured, and they don't make those nutrients up later in the day. And Mahoney et al. 2005 is the study. We got a question. Yes, so if you do Jimmy Dean breakfast bowls, any of that stuff, that's 26 grams. That's great. Some of the breakfast sandwiches that we have, I know, are 19 grams. So that's fantastic. Your goal should always be 25 grams of protein minimum at breakfast. All right. And just real quick, yeah, snacking, we've talked about that. Packing, tournament fuel, again, here's the jelly sandwich, there's no peanut butter in there. Bagel, dried fruit is great as well. Stripped of, the fiber, which is basically sugar and water, or excuse me, sugar. The water is also taken out as well because it's dried. Those are great options. And then here's some other things. I know we're running out of time. I want to make sure that we have a solid Q&A session. But as far as, carbs, right, we've talked about this. What does that really look like? And that fueling strategy that I just shared, the breakdown, that's how you get in that amount of carbohydrates. It would be impossible if you only ate 2 meals a day and you didn't have snacks. That's why I recommend that breakdown. And however you can make that happen with, bagels or granola bars, however you see fit for your food likes, dislikes. But track and field endurance athletes need a lot of carbohydrates. Hockey as well, you're going to need over 350 grams a day. And that's not going to happen if you're only eating, 2 to 3 meals. And then here's a baseball tip sheet as well. And we've done the nutrient analysis on this. Again, I hear from parents either this is awesome or that is not realistic. Again, these are just recommendations to get the athlete building the habit. I don't know if you've read the book Atomic Habits. It's one of my favorites, but we just got to build the habit. So maybe they're not eating a full lunch, but maybe they're going to start, bringing something, maybe they're going to start bringing a snack for before their workout or after their workout. But the nutrient timing strategy, right, the 4-2-1 chew nibble sip, is really executed by getting into the routine of bringing something over nothing. And that's how you build and stack habits. And that's just critical. So find what works well for you. We've given you a number of high quality meals and snacks to pick from. I really like the tuna and chicken packets because those are obviously shelf stable. You can bring those with you on a plane. They're 20 plus grams of protein, 17 grams, whatever, depending upon the variation. But those store well in a backpack, a locker. Also a great thing, 2 hours before you can bring those to tournaments to protect muscle breakdown. Here's more, again, tip sheets for male, female athletes. Same principles, right? High quality foods. I get questions about Pop-Tarts a lot. I'm just not a Pop-Tart dietitian. I'm not against them. But I've just noticed that, like, obviously, if you have access to Pop-Tarts in the vending machine and that's the only thing available, I would rather you eat the Pop-Tart than nothing. But carbs are carbs at the end of the day. Some carbohydrate sources have more nutrients than others. And I really obviously want our kids to have the most nutrients in their plan as possible. So it's not, an all foods fit, but I do obviously like some foods more than others. And as far as, bagels and sandwiches and English muffins, those are really awesome choices. If your kiddo loves Pop-Tarts, that's fine, but make sure that there is a protein paired with that Pop-Tart, like if it's at breakfast. So at least they're getting some protein at breakfast, because Pop-Tarts are just, sugar, carbohydrates. There's no vitamin A, there's no vitamin C in those items. So a better choice obviously is going to be, all right, do the Pop-Tart, but pair it with the string cheese, pair it with the hard-boiled egg, pair it with the core power. That's how success is made while still meeting them where they're at. And real quick, just recovery, obviously a part of nutrient timing. So if you're, again, back-to-back games, you have a couple of hours, this might look a little bit different, but for every hour of activity, right, we need that 50 to 75 grams. But if you don't have a lot of time, right, to break those things down, you want to try and at least do that 25, 50, 30 rule. So these are some solid options. The, core powers, they're great, 26 grams, 30 grams, 42 grams in the elite. You can do a turkey bagel sandwich. You can do the Okios Pro has 25 grams. You can put honey in it to increase the carbs. You can do berries. These are all things that you can pack and take with you to a tournament. And you can also set up a fueling station. We've helped a lot of our high schools and colleges that partner with us set up fueling stations so that they can offer these things to their athletes. And obviously chocolate milk. It's not my opinion. It is one of the best recovery beverages. And we know that according to the science, there's over 20 plus research studies illustrating why chocolate milk is the ideal recovery beverage. It offers that 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. And we know too, right, bone building nutrients. So if you're someone that's concerned about the sugar content in chocolate milk, I wouldn't be, because you need that sugar, you need the carbohydrates. You're also getting, again, 9 essential nutrients and that high quality protein that's rich in leucine to repair what's been broken down. And it has electrolytes in it, which you sweat those out. So if anyone has questions on creatine, I put it in here just because I always get questions on creatine, but that is it, right? Chew, nibble, sip. 4 hours out, you're eating a main meal. 2 hours out, right? You're nibbling protein and carb, and then 1 hour out, you're sipping on fluid. No solid food in the gut at the time of performance. All meals matter, right? Really focus on building out that fueling strategy in practice days, non-competitive, trial days. I know we work with so many athletes, coaches, whoever listens to this, have your athletes build their 4-2-1 chew, nibble, sip fueling strategy with some of these meals and snacks, and only they can decide what their best go-to meals are. And we all, as athletes and competitive people, we have a ritual. I played college softball, so my ritual before a game looked completely different than someone else. I was a pitcher, so I had my thing that I did, and that's the same thing with our nutrition. It's making sure that you do the meal that you're comfortable with, that sits well with you, and you feel your best. So that's a grilled chicken sandwich. It's a turkey sandwich with an apple and pretzels and then some honey. Awesome. If it's blueberries and Greek yogurt and some oatmeal, great. Find what works well for you and do not compare to other people. Don't look at what they do. Do what you need to do, given this data, this information in fueling and recovering. And obviously water and sleep, those are all important modalities that we discussed as well. And now I'm going to open it up to questions. Who has questions? And don't be shy. I love it. I knew we'd get questions about creatine, so I put it in here. All right, so just real quick, I have videos on creatine. I have a blog on creatine and youth athletes. I have all the science in there. It's not my opinion. I'm not paid by anybody. I make $0 off talking about creatine. So full disclaimer, everybody should be using creatine. Creatine is 3 amino acids. It's arginine, glycine, and methionine. It will help you recover better from workouts. It will help you recycle ATP because of the mechanism of action. It can help you build and maintain lean mass. It can also help with bone mineral density. It can also help improve your reaction time following a sleep deprivation time period. There's some really cool studies coming out. I have some solid friends in Canada that are doing all these great studies. So it's also been proven to help with regulating diabetes and some neurological disorders following traumatic brain injury. So please go please go check out creatine monohydrate studies in that blog. And as far as answering the question, the best time to use creatine is any time of day. Just using it, number one, is your goal. So don't get all upset about, I didn't have it after my workout. That's okay, right? It's 3 amino acids, arginine, glycine, and methionine. It's found in animal protein. So protein, right, as you had heard, recovery is a 24-hour process. We need to have protein at a continuous rate every single day. So you can use creatine any time of day. It's just that in the studies, they've tested creatine monohydrate post-resistance training, post-workout. So we have the most data illustrating that creatine is best utilized post-workout with carbohydrate because it is insulin mediated. So it requires a carbohydrate for maximum absorption. So I recommend always put it in your chocolate milk, put it in your banana protein smoothie. You can mix it into Greek yogurt. You can add it into any type of carbohydrate solution as well, sports drink. But then, of course, you want to make sure you have some protein with it as well for recovery. But 5 grams, you don't need to load. If you want to load, I have the guidance in the blog. There's even a free creatine monohydrate PDF that you can utilize to learn how to help your athletes if you're a coach or teach your kiddos. That's also in the blog. Yes, good question, John. Obviously, creatine, just like carbohydrates. So carbohydrates draw water into the cell, so does creatine. Creatine is very hydrating, despite people just don't understand the mechanism of action. Creatine helps actually reduce muscle cramping because of the water drawing into the cell mechanism of action. So it is best recommended to add in an additional 16 to 24 ounces of fluid when taking creatine, which is why I love mixing it into smoothies, because you're getting extra liquid, right, to help with that process. But creatine doesn't cause cramping. If anyone's thinking that, there's several studies. Dr. Rick Kreider, he did a study in collegiate football players and actually showed that they were more hydrated with supplementing with creatine monohydrate. It's just that most people don't drink enough water, or they use creatine and bang and caffeine, and then all these other artificial sweeteners can cause cramping and gut irritation. So it's not the creatine, it's actually those other things. So creatine is very hydrating. So 16 to 24 ounces extra fluid when consuming it. A third-party tested vitamin. You can take a multivitamin if you wish, but again, a lot of our, like I said, the supplements are not as heavily regulated as our pharmaceuticals. The one-a-day women's, one-a-day men's, those were ones that we used at the University of Florida. They gave them to their athletes, but you're not getting the same nutrients from supplements that you are getting from food. So always food first. Zinc, vitamin D, magnesium, calcium, those are great to supplement with. If you get, like I said, a multivitamin, those would be the ones I would recommend, but make sure it's third-party tested. You can actually look up on the NSF Informed Choice approved app. It's a free app. You can download it. You can put in any supplement into that app to determine if it is third-party tested. Because again, if it's not, it could have a banned substance in it. It could have proprietary blend of rat poison. It could have anything in there. I could go put something together in my garage. I could have it on the market next week until the FDA can prove that I caused harm to my athletes or individuals. They would not be pulled. So it's a very, very loose situation with these supplements, competing within 2 hours after weigh-ins. Yes, so within 2 hours, white, yep, because you want that quick absorption. And most athletes that are doing wrestling or weight-related combat sports, they've been cutting and they've had to watch their carbohydrate intake. So I would recommend the white. And then obviously later on, after you're done and you're going home to eat, whole grain, definitely whole grain bagel, whole grain pasta, all the things. This is good questions. Does the caffeine, does the creatine slide, does this help? These are third-party tested ones, as you can see, right? Informed Choice. If you do a multivitamin, Thorne, Clean, just to address that, these are good brands. Again, I have zero ties with any companies. I make $0. I'm just giving you the information, and you guys can make, the best informed decision. And that's a good brand too. Yeah, I love NOW. It's much cheaper than some of these others, but I do really like Thorne and Clean. They're excellent. There's obviously more than what I have on the graphic. So don't feel like, well, Wendy, I can't find these. What do I do? If it's third-party tested, if it's Informed Choice approved, they're perfectly fine. It seems like every day. That's a good one too. They have gummies now. I do have information on the gummies. I personally would continue to use the powder or the capsules instead of the gummies, because the gummies, with the processing and the heating and the production, I am not convinced, according to the limited data, that the gummies contain the same amount of creatine. So I would not use the gummies. I wouldn't waste my money, but if you want to use the gummies, it's your decision. I just know that I sampled them at ISSN where I spoke last summer. I didn't like the taste. I thought they were awful. They're expensive, and they have added sugars. Not that I'm worried about added sugar, but I would rather just do straight up 100% creatine monohydrate without all the fluff. But again, that's your decision, your discretion, but I just haven't seen enough data also to say that, yeah, there's definitely 5 grams in these little gummies because some of the heating mechanisms and the processing and production can actually lose some of the creatine. I wouldn't say any food, right? There's just, John, so your question, it's not stop consuming. It's just, again, what are the foods that are going to, potentially cause water retention, which are high sodium foods. So anything that's processed, like your pretzels, those are going to retain fluid. It's not going to be fat, but it's going to cause an increase on the scale. So if you're someone, again, that's teetering on, the scale, I would basically avoid fiber. So even some of the fruits and vegetables, I would limit the high water content of some of the fruits like watermelon, grapes. I would stick with low fiber too. And then obviously I would do more or less your protein. So grilled chicken breasts would be, I'm sure a lot of wrestlers I'm like, oh, but yes, grilled chicken, and then obviously you can still do some fruit, but I would go with some of the lower water content fruits and, strawberries. That would be good. You could do the Greek yogurt, but hopefully, fingers crossed, there is no such thing as cutting weight. We always say, right, you should be focused on that in the off season. So hopefully you're not cutting or doing anything crazy or water fast, things like that. But just avoiding some of those high fat, high sodium foods is going to be the best thing to do. You still need to eat though, right? Because if you don't have fuel in the tank, your blood sugar is going to be very low and you're going to feel like trash, and you're also going to muscle cramp. But pasta, some of the steaks, like fried foods, things like that too, are things you should avoid. And I just want to again emphasize how important it is to try foods and utilize those foods that work well for you. Someone else has a question. My goal, you really shouldn't, whey protein once a day. I wouldn't recommend doing any more than that because you should be eating whole foods. As we learned, right? We don't get the same nutrient value as we do, from supplements as we do whole foods. So chicken, beef, steak, fish, eggs, those are the best protein sources. If you want to do whey protein once a day, that's perfectly fine. I'm not against whey protein, as you all know. It's been proven to be beneficial. But like I said, look at all these other whole food options that you can do. And here's a protein bar. A lot of these protein bars, they're proprietary blends. They don't even contain the actual amount often, unless it's like an RX bar, which we know it's egg whites and nuts and seeds. But options for high school athletes. I have some whey protein and plant-based protein bar graphics as well that is in my health and performance playbook that you can purchase. It's also freely available to post it on the website, on my social media, but I would recommend picking out these options before going to a whey protein. But if you want to do whey protein, you could do it once a day. If you're traveling, obviously that's difficult, but with the beautiful, gas station gains, if you will. I have a graphic on the best proteins at gas stations. You can do Greek yogurt, you can do the Fairlife milk, you can get actual dairy, right? We can do hard-boiled eggs there. There's so many ways, the deli turkey, the string cheese, there's so many whole food protein sources out there that we really shouldn't be reliant upon the protein supplements more than once a day.
So, Wendy, I've heard you mention the cherry juice several times, and I've seen it on a lot of your slides over the past year and a half. Can you talk more about that as to why that's a good option?
Yeah, so tart cherries, right? They're rich in antioxidants, polyphenols that reduce muscle soreness, and then you're also getting the carbohydrates. So it helps refuel, it helps repair, and supports immune function. So when I was at the University of Florida, they were giving their athletes 4 ounces pre and then 4 ounces post because that glycogen replenishment. And it's quick fuel. So the benefits are infinite, right? Because of the antioxidants, the polyphenols. If you're not a tart cherry juice liker, you could always do blueberry juice. You can do pomegranate juice. There are very similar benefits. And there's several studies that indicate in endurance athletes that it helped reduce their muscle soreness, their time to fatigue, and then also enhance their recovery process. So there's infinite benefits on tart cherry juice. It's a good question.
Thank you.
Yes, I love those questions. Oh, that's nice. Well, thank you. Yes, and thank you everyone for carving out time to be here and for investing. I know there's a lot of information, but that's the beautiful thing about, the recording and getting access to the slide deck. This is something we do in our our presentations with programs as part of the partnership. I have our two amazing new sports nutritionists, registered dietitians on the call with us today, Sophia and Brenna. If anyone has questions for them specifically, please ask them. Anybody have questions for Sophia? She works with a lot of our female athletes, endurance athletes. She's a runner herself. She's also teaching a sports nutrition class. She's getting her PhD. She's really smart. She's going to teach me a lot of things too. I'm so excited that she joined us. Sophia, do you want to just quick introduce yourself?
Sophia, the class that you teach, is that a college class?
Yes, it's an undergraduate course at the University of Miami.
Is it an online class?
No, it's an in-person lecture 3 times a week.
Okay. I was just thinking if maybe some of our coaches or physical education teachers were looking for continuing ed, because we're just now delving into the nutrition aspect of it, and we're actually going to teach nutrition for as a semester class starting next fall. So we're looking for resources, looking for just different ideas, especially for our female and male athletes.
Yeah, I love that you guys are planning to offer that. That's so important. Maybe Wendy has some ideas on how we can collaborate there. But yeah, I love that idea. And I'm happy to maybe collaborate in some way on that. I'll have to maybe discuss that with Wendy.
Yeah, John, we do. So our sports nutrition partnership is that ongoing nutrition education for coaches, for the athletes, for the educators. I also have, every quarter I'll do a presentation with the school in New Jersey where it's just their educators. And we talk about plant-based versus animal-based diets. We talk about nutrition education. So if you guys are willing to, obviously it's a budget thing, I completely understand, but we do that coaching and that mentorship on any topic that you want. That is, or the health and performance playbook that has all those nutrition education pieces that you see. I've had coaches just buy that for their school and then they just teach it because I've done all that work. Everything is science-based. It has everything you would need from nutrition 101 to recovery to weight gain, weight loss. Obviously there's several special considerations with celiac, if you're nut free, eating disorders, things like that. Those are, additional things that, Sophia and Brenna, myself, we can jump on calls and we can work with any coach or any program to provide that nutrition education, so that you can educate your student athletes.
Okay. Wendy, something I'd like to do maybe in the near future is set up a conference call with you to look at maybe some different options of if we did some type of a Zoom meeting once a month with our coaches or with our athletes and maybe throughout the school year, like whether it's a 1 hour session or whatnot twice a month, or what that would maybe look like.
So that actually is, John, that's the sports nutrition partnership. So I believe I quoted your AD. I sent him, this is what it costs each month to do those things. That exact thing that you're requesting, that is our sports nutrition partnership. So I'd love to, if we want to do another call, I believe I spoke with him. I sent him all the invoice information on that. So if you guys want to explore that further and you want to do, only one presentation, we also have just, book a presentation fee. You could do that. I mean, but what you're looking for is exactly what we've been doing for, over 5 years now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Brenna, do you want to real quick introduce yourself and, I know she's muted.
I forgot I was muted. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I'm Brenna. I'm also a sports nutritionist. My background was more in cheer. So I was a collegiate cheerleader, but really big into CrossFit, weightlifting now. So I work primarily with more of the team sports, any type of team sports, wrestling, lacrosse, baseball, football, all that good stuff.
Excellent. Yes. So 4 minutes over here, I have an athlete I have to meet with here, but thank you all so much for your time today. And we look forward to helping you, in any way possible. If it is just a nutrition 101, or you want to do some mentorship for your fellow educators so that you guys can be, champions of wellness for your students and student athletes, we can do that. Go to the website. If you check out the partnership tab, we have our testimonials on there. We have a group nutrition coaching program starting on January 6th that Brenna and Sophia will be leading. We also have our one-on-one student athlete coaching program, and we just are here to help if you have any questions on anything. Thank you so much for your time, your investment today. I will send out the recording and then a copy of the slide deck as part of today. And just thank you all so much for being here, and have a blessed day.
Thank you.